All right, let's dive into the world of sustainability reporting. You see it everywhere now on products and company reports, but behind all those glossy pages, there's this massive question. Is any of this actually driving real change, or is it just the world's most expensive PR campaign? Let's figure it out. First, let's just wrap our heads around the scale here. We're talking about $30.3 trillion. That's the total global investment in so-called sustainable assets. I mean, this is not some small niche market anymore. It is a massive financial force, and it's what's driving this huge demand for transparency on ESG issues. That's environmental, social, and governance. And that demand, it has never been higher. And yet, for all that money, there's this huge cloud of skepticism hanging over everything. It seems like for every dollar invested, there's a legitimate question about greenwashing or inconsistent data, or companies just cherry-picking the good news. So is all this reporting actually making things better, or is it just a really, really expensive PR exercise? That's the paradox we're digging into today. So here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll get into that $30 trillion paradox. Then, we are going to try to cut through that crazy alphabet soup of reporting standards. After that, we'll get to the most important concept in this whole field, materiality. Then we'll look at how a major player, GRI, actually puts that idea into practice. And finally, we'll connect all the dots on why any of this really matters. Okay, let's jump right into that paradox, because you've got this incredible, massive growth on one side and this deep, nagging skepticism on the other. And that tension, right there, is the key to understanding this whole space. This quote from the Harvard Business Review just gets right to the heart of it. Reporting is not a proxy for progress. It's so powerful because it highlights the biggest fear everyone has, that companies are getting really good at talking about sustainability, but maybe not so good at actually doing anything about it. I mean, while reporting has absolutely exploded, global carbon emissions just keep on rising. The worry is that all this paperwork is just becoming a substitute for the hard, real-world changes that we actually need. And look, this skepticism isn't just a vague feeling. It's based on some very real, very frustrating problems. The data from one company to the next is often totally inconsistent. You see a lot of cherry picking where companies only report on the stuff that makes them look good. That makes it pretty much impossible to compare two organizations or to even see if one company is getting better over time. And underneath it all, you've got this confusing mess of frameworks, plus the fact that, believe it or not, a lot of this reporting is still voluntary. Okay, so let's say you decide to look under the hood of one of these sustainability reports. You're immediately going to run into a huge problem, this confusing, chaotic mess of acronyms. It's what everyone calls the alphabet soup. Let's try and make some sense of it. Yeah, if you've ever tried to read a sustainability report, you've seen this. It's just a wall of letters. GRI, IFRS, TNFD, SASB. It feels totally overwhelming. And the fact that companies can kind of pick and choose which ones they use often just adds to the confusion instead of building any real trust. But we can simplify this. You can basically sort all this soup into two main bowls. In one bowl, you've got the standard setters like GRI and IFRS. Think of them as providing the detailed rulebook, the how-to of reporting. In the other bowl, you've got frameworks like the UN Global Compact. They provide the big picture principles, the what to report on. Just remembering that difference between the how and the what is a huge first step towards clarity. But that kind of leads to an even bigger, more fundamental question, right? Once we figure out how to report, what exactly are we supposed to be reporting on? Like, what's actually important here? And that question brings us to the concept of materiality. Seriously, if you only remember one term from this whole explainer, make it this one. It is the key that unlocks the different philosophies and the different goals behind every single sustainability report out there. So the core idea is something called double materiality. All it means is that there are two different but equally important ways of looking at things. A company needs to understand its own impacts on the world, but it also needs to understand how the world's big sustainability challenges are gonna impact the company. Let's break that down. So on one side, you've got impact reporting. Think of this as an inside-out view. It asks the question, what are our company's effects on the economy, on the environment, on people? It's all about being transparent about how you contribute to, or maybe take away from, sustainable development. Then on the other side, you have sustainability-related financial reporting. This is an outside-in view. It asks, how do things like climate change or resource shortages create financial risks or opportunities for our business? This is much more about the long-term financial health of the company itself.
So here's the billion-dollar question that divides this entire landscape. Is a company's main job to report on its impact on the world or the world's impact on its bottom line?
And that question, impact on the world or the world's impact on you, is exactly where these different standards plant their flag. So let's look at the Global Reporting Initiative, or GRI. They have a very, very clear answer. It is all about that inside-out approach.
And GRI is a huge player in this space. A full 77% of the world's 250 largest companies use the GRI standards for their sustainability reporting. It is, by a long shot, the most widely used standard for impact reporting on the planet.
The whole purpose of the GRI standards is right there in their own definition. It is all about disclosing an organization's most significant impacts on the world around it. This is the absolute essence of that inside-out perspective we were just talking about.
And this quote, it just illustrates their philosophy perfectly. GRI makes it crystal clear a company cannot just ignore a major impact it has on the world, say on human rights or biodiversity, just because that impact doesn't hurt the company's bottom line right now. For GRI, the impact itself comes first, period.
And the way GRI achieves this is through a really smart modular system. It all starts with a foundation of universal standards that every organization uses. Then it gets more specific. It adds sector standards because obviously the biggest impacts of an oil company are going to be different from a tech company. And finally, it provides detailed topic standards for specific issues like water or waste. This layered approach is what helps make the reporting both consistent and actually relevant to what matters. Okay, so we've worked our way through the paradox, the alphabet soup, and the idea of materiality. Let's bring it all home and talk about why this actually matters to you, whether you're an investor, a customer, or just, a person living on this planet. So what are the big takeaways? First, the money is very real. We're talking trillions. But the skepticism about greenwashing is just as real. Second, don't be afraid of the alphabet soup. Just remember, there's a difference between the rule makers, the standard setters, and the big idea givers, the frameworks. Third, and this is the big one, always ask yourself, is this report looking inside out, focusing on its impact on the world, or outside in, focusing on the world's financial impact on the company? And finally, remember that GRI is the global go-to for that inside-out, impact-first approach. Ultimately, the whole point of all this reporting is to get to a place of clarity and accountability. It's supposed to give all of us, investors, customers, communities, the information we need to make better decisions. But it leaves us with one final, crucial question. If transparent reporting is the first step toward progress, what actions are supposed to follow? That right there is the real challenge ahead.